22 News Broadcast Center. This is 22 News in Focus. Today, how the election of a new pope will impact the Catholic community in Western Massachusetts. Here's Laura Hutchinson.
Good Sunday afternoon and welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Laura Hutchinson. This week, members of the Roman Catholic Church learned who their new leader will be. 115 cardinals met in Rome to select a new pope, and they chose Pope Francis. The new pontiff is the first pope to be born outside Europe in 1,300 years. He's 76 years old, and he's from Argentina. And now there are a number of questions people want answered, like what type of leader is he? What can we expect? And was this a good choice? That's where 22 News in Focus comes in. Today we'll talk to members of the Springfield Diocese about their expectations. Joining us today, we have Father William Pomerleau, and we have Angel Diaz, who's an active leader in the Latino Catholic community here in Western Massachusetts. Thank you both so much for being here. Really,
pleased to be here.
What an exciting week for the Catholic community in particular, huh? Tell me, what were your feelings this week, and what was your reaction?
Well, like everybody else, we play a little bit of the game of figuring out who the front runners are, who we think is going to get it. And I was surprised. I knew of Cardinal Bergoglio, and I thought he would have been a good choice. But I thought because of his age, the Cardinals were looking for somebody younger who they thought would be able to be a little more vigorous. But on the other hand, upon reflection, considering what Pope Benedict has done, has said that, listen, if I can no longer do the job, I'll retire. And conceivably that might happen again. So probably on second thought, I shouldn't have been as surprised as I was.
Okay, very good. How about yourself?
I think we were all gladly surprised when the name came up, and we weren't necessarily sure, because we have read or heard about the front runners, but we kind of kept on a back burner the Cardinals' the name, and we didn't realize it was him until it finally came out, and it's, oh, the Argentinian guy. All right.
Right.
So there was. We were gladly surprised. That I think everybody was expecting something maybe different than before, but no, we were hopeful and now grateful.
Yeah, this is certainly a different person that we have there. Mm-hmm. You know, you had mentioned the age, that something that you might have been concerned about at the beginning. Because you mentioned that, how about health as well? I understand he has one fully functioning lung. Any concerns about that?
Well, the Vatican spokesman has pretty much clarified that. Apparently, unlike the first reports, it seems that when he was a young man, part of one lung was taken out. So sure. I guess he has, what, 1.5 lungs,
One and a half,
so to
it
speak.
sounds like, right.
And they've said that there's been no other health issues since then. Mm-hmm. So I think that's that may be a little bit not as big a deal as people think it is.
Sure.
Obviously, if he did have a continuing history of health problems, I think that probably would have been a big factor against him, any candidate.
Sure. How about the name that he chose? Pope Francis would be the first one. So what do you think about that?
I think for the past few days, we have come to realize that, yeah, this name suits him.
Yeah.
He has shown an immense humility. And I think as a Jesuit, when he took vows of poverty, I think he has exercised that rather well. Now it shows an example.
It does. What do you think about the name choice and just his character and personality from what we've heard?
Well, it's kind of a brilliant move, because I think within 5 minutes everybody kind of understood what was going on. Obviously, it's mostly Italians in the square there, so they immediately were thinking of St. Francis of Assisi. I was thinking of St. Francis Xavier as well, who was a very famous Jesuit missionary to India. But I think that name resonates with so many people. It's a favorite saint. And I think it really says we're going to talk about evangelization. We're going to talk about living a simple life. And the Pope has certainly shown that already in the first couple days of his papacy, the way he's dressed, the way he's speaking, the way he's traveling around very simply. So I think using Francis Assisi as a role model is certainly a real shot in the arm, and something perhaps we need to go back to. It's probably a little unfair to Pope Benedict to say that Pope Benedict was a ostentatious man. First of all, he was older, and in the latter years, he needed a little bit more assistance to go places. Sometimes people make a big thing about the cape he wears. Yes, it's a little bit old-fashioned, but he started wearing it when he was getting older, and he physically needed something warm to wear when he would be outside. But nonetheless, symbolism is everything in any field, and I think this choice of the name and all that goes along with it really says a lot about what priorities this Holy Father is going to have.
And how about his background from Argentina? You know, the first pope from outside of Europe in a number of years. Was that a surprise? Is that almost significant in this case?
I think it shows at this point first the importance of where a lot of Catholics are from Latin America. The other thing I said, we saw a lot of Facebook, a lot of media. There was a particular picture that we were sharing earlier that says it's an overhead view of the Vatican. And it says under new administration, se habla español. You say, well, that's good and dandy. That's very nice. But they have spoken Spanish in the Vatican for a while now. They have departments and all that, Radio Vatican and all that.
Sure.
So it was in good humor that say, yes, we some people can now say maybe I can identify now with the Pope because he's from our side of the world, which brings us, well, it really doesn't matter where he's from. We can all, as Catholics, should identify with.
Yeah. And how about the Latino community here in Western Massachusetts? I mean, you work with them very closely. What are they saying? What are some of the reactions that you're hearing?
They're immensely happy.
What did you say?
There's a lot of joy on seeing a Latin American Pope. There's a lot of say, well, maybe it's a couple of parishioners who like to say, maybe now we can give him a phone call and we can chat. Or, well, how is he going to, for example, how is he going to be received in Latin Americans in Argentina and if he travels down there? How is he going to be received here as a Latin American Pope when he comes over to visit? So all this, I mean, a lot of our Latino community, yes, can say I can identify with him now more than I probably did before with any other Pope. But I think besides us, far from that, and we can always identify with the Pope, no matter what nationality we come from.
How about the vote itself? You know, after just one full day of conclave, we've seen this go on much longer than that. Did you ever expect it to happen so quickly?
Well, I predicted Thursday, and I did it on several media outlets, so I can't get away from it. So I thought it would be. I thought it would be at least another day, frankly. I thought it would take them 6 or 7 ballots to really have one guy get over that 2/3 barrier. But clearly, this cardinal, had support going in, and clearly he must have gotten a substantial number of votes, 30 votes, 35 votes, maybe more, from the first ballot. And then at that point, you just say, is there anybody else who could possibly be a front runner? Or is he somebody who, after you vote once or twice, he's kind of peaked? I usually call it the Newt Gingrich effect. Newt Gingrich had a lot of strong supporters in the Republican primary, but he never got above that certain number. And then they started looking around for other people, which is how Mitt Romney got the nomination. But that didn't happen here. It seems to me that he was there from the beginning, and whoever else was in the running, they kind of faded away or decided that they wanted to back somebody who they thought would be a good pope and just to get it over with. And it was all over in, what, a day and a half.
Really quick, much quicker, as you said, and many others have suggested, than any people had expected. Very good. I want to thank you both so much for being here. We're going to continue this conversation after the break. We are going to take a short break, so stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about Pope Francis, who was chosen this week to succeed Pope Benedict XVI. He celebrated his first Mass as pontiff on Thursday. He was joined in the Sistine Chapel by the cardinals who elected him as head of the world's 1.2 billion Catholics. The leader, who's already emerging as a humble man devoted to his duties, used his first sermon as Pope to share his ideas about life. And today we are discussing the expectations of this new leader. Joining us today, we have Father William Pomerleau and Angel Diaz, who is an active leader in the Latino Catholic community here in Western Massachusetts. Again, thank you so much for being with us. Let's talk about now, we really dissected who he is and, this vote, how this vote came to be. Let's talk about now what the expectations are of this Pope. What do you think is expected for someone, leading the Catholics in the 21st century?
Well, I think there are the internal baseball kind of issues. Obviously, there's some issues with the Roman Curia, how efficient it is, whether they're staying on course, whether they're all speaking with the same game plan, and there's some things that need to be done there. I think he's going to be doing some administrative changes. That's clear. But once that's taken care of, I think we're going to start looking at the issues which have been bubbling up in the church for years and years, but especially in this part of the world, don't get that much attention. Economic justice. Both of the most recent popes have said things that would seem very radical to an American's point of view about the international finance system exploiting the poor, exploiting whole societies. And I think he's going to push that even more to the forefront. I think now, because of his personality, it's going to maybe get a better ear in the world's media. The environment, that's something that the popes have been talking about for a while now, and I think that will be a major issue. And the other one is what I always call growth. There's a perception that the Catholic Church is not growing. In fact, it is growing. Even in this country, it's growing by 2% a year. It's different demographics, perhaps, a lot more Latinos, a lot more various black populations from Africa, the Caribbean, African Americans, and it's a poorer church, just as the world is getting poorer. And how do we cope with that? And how do we represent people who have other things to talk about than birth control or some of the traditional issues from the 60s, which really don't concern most of the world? So this growth issue is a big issue. You
talked about how the church is growing, but here in Western Mass in particular, we've even had to deal with some Catholic church closing because of low attendance, just less people coming out on Sundays. Is there something specific that you think can be done to get more people to get back out into church? I know you were just saying that we're growing, but of course we've seen examples here in Western Mass where we're not.
Well, even here, sometimes people have a over perception of what's happened. Next month I'm going to a groundbreaking for $1 million parish hall, St. Paul's Parish in Springfield. That is a parish that has English-speaking parishioners, but has the Vietnamese community. There are new churches being built in Westfield, in Belchertown, and areas like that. A lot of this is demographic shifting. Yes, it's true. Overall, there are fewer Catholics now than there were 20 years ago in Western Massachusetts. There are fewer people than there were 20 years ago in Western Massachusetts. So even if you had Jesus Christ himself wowing everybody, you would probably still be closing churches because there are just fewer bodies out there. So some of the realignment and some of the consolidating buildings doesn't necessarily mean a crisis in the church as much as a crisis in demographics, a crisis in the economy. Go to Florida, you're not seeing church closings. Why? Because Florida is booming. Here, we're having a cutback.
Right, and in all fairness as well, I mean, the reason we lost a congressional seat was because many people are simply leaving Western Massachusetts, and that's something that you need to take a look at as well. As we've been talking about this, what are you thinking? What are you thinking are some of the big issues that you think the Pope needs to address?
I think the social justice issue has to be addressed now on a global basis. I mean, the management of resources has to really come into place. Because it keeps shifting. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. We have to we have to kind of accommodate ourselves to think as a way we should have what we need, and not necessarily what's the best, what's the latest. So we should just accommodate to what we need, because that's the thinking that shares a community, a community effort. That's what it shares, a message of living in communion. That's sharing resources in an equal basis, and management of resources and social justice. I think that's an issue that has to be addressed on a global basis, including here in the U.S.
Yeah. What about the sex abuse scandal that's been, within this church for several years now? Is there something that needs to be done to make people feel safe to come, to bring, and make everyone feel like this is a safe place to be again, and come and, and celebrate your beliefs together?
Well, it depends on what you mean by done. If you're talking about policies in this country, certainly, and in most of Europe, the actions have been done, the policies are done. There's zero tolerance for sexual abuse by clergy or anybody employed by the church for that matter. And you see that in the fact that there are no reports of active abuse in the last 20 years or so. And even globally, the Vatican has made it clear that each bishops' conference around the world has to have policies, and they all have to basically adopt what's been church law here for a number of years. So really, in terms of those things, that's already been done, even though sometimes you read the media and people don't quite understand that, because there are victims groups or people trying to remind us of the problems of the past. On another level, though, however, we still do need to continue to minister to people who've been hurt. We need to keep apologizing. We need to keep reaching out. We need to make it clear what our values are. And that's going to take a long time. That's going to take a lot of issues. It's like if a woman has been abused by her husband and she leaves her husband, you just can't say, well, get over it, get on with your life. Sure. Some people spend the rest of their lives getting over deep hurt. So I think it's really, again, I don't want to say image, but projecting concern, projecting what we are doing, what we want to do.
And acknowledging that it happened,
acknowledging
and that's an
happened.
important part of this.
They've already done that. We've had 3 popes now apologize quite directly and quite publicly for the sins of priests. But you have to keep doing it, and you have to keep saying it. So in a sense, maybe time will heal. Eventually, they'll run out of bishops that they can criticize for their actions because they'll be dead or retired. Right now, all the bishops who are having problems with this issue are being criticized for their actions in the 1980s or earlier. But, we still need to do that. We still need to show the face of the church.
Very good. We're going to continue this conversation. We're going to take a short break. Stay with us. You're Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. If you're just joining us today, we're talking about the Roman Catholic Church's election of a new pope, Pope Francis, and how he will affect Catholics here and around the world. Joining us today, we have Father William Pomerleau and Angel Diaz, who is an active leader in the Latino Catholic community here in Western Massachusetts. Now, the Mass to inaugurate Pope Francis will officially be on Tuesday. That is his official beginning in his new position. Talk to me about what you think, people here in Western Massachusetts will be expecting as he begins. Talk to us about, in particular, the Latino population. I mean, this is really a big moment, especially.
I think that because of the growth that we had in the past couple of years, I think it has to make an impact. First on image, but then at work. He did, again, the management of resources, and because that's the message that he has done down in Buenos Aires when Pope Francis was over there as a bishop and cardinal. He a lot of that has to work out with resources here in the diocese or in the Western Mass. We have to learn how to shift the resources for the people who need it the most. And as the Latino ministry has growth in this many years, it started out with a few parishes. Now it's probably 5 or 6, and even in the Pittsfield area, in the Berkshires, has grown immensely. So I think the expectancy is to better manage those resources to attend those people who need it the most. The poor, I mean, we have to attend those needs, and sharing in those in that work. I think encouraging people on that work, social issues, social justice work. I think that's going to be the big change, or the big encouragement, rather, big message throughout the Latino community, which has been expecting that for years now.
What is it that's made the Latino community in the Catholic Church grow so much here in Western? What do you think is behind that?
I think it's faith-based. We grow up with our faith. I mean, we bring it from our country's origin. Me personally from Puerto Rico, but we have a great mixture of countries around Latin America that are here. Our faith brings us together, and when we land here in Western Mass, and we have that in common. So more and more come up, and we still have that in common, even if our Spanish language is maybe a little different from back home over here. But I think that's the work, social justice work. It's the main focus for encouragement and for growth here in the U.S. Attend the needs of those who need it the most.
Yeah,
I think this actually applies to other groups as well. I work with African Catholics quite a bit, and smaller community coming here with great faith, coming here with a lot of talents. They were very active in the church in Africa, and what you need to do is care for them, adapt to their culture, but you also have to affirm them. And sometimes people are a little hesitant. They say, well, is this really a racist kind of church? Are we really welcome? Do we really believe that we can have leadership here in the church? And I talked about the possibility of a pope from Africa, and I think some of my local African Catholics didn't quite think it could happen, because there's always this feeling that the church is white and this power structure is white. And sometimes when you show it by who's in positions of leadership, it makes it easier to happen. So this is happening not only with Latinos, it's happening with other groups as well.
That's very interesting, and it will be interesting to see how the population changes under his leadership as well. You know, if more people feel safe or encouraged to come out and join.
Yeah, I mean, the population's just changing just by dint of who's having babies and who's coming into the faith. If you talk about rate of growth, the Africans are growing fastest in the world. So 50 years from now, everybody will understand that Africa is the center of the action, so to speak, of the global church. And you have to have the leadership and the structure and the cultural mentality to follow the facts on the ground of the demographics. I think having a Latino pope is a great sign value, and I think other groups will understand that. Maybe doing their turn next time.
Father Pomelo and Angel Diaz, thank you so much for being here. Such wonderful information, and I hope some people at home were able to learn a few different things about the new pope. Very good. And we're going to have the last word for you after the break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. That's our program. Thanks to our guests. Thanks for watching. Have a great Sunday.